I just would like to briefly mention that programs at the library are made possible by our annual Friends of the Library campaign. So thank you so much for your continued support to make programs like these available to the community. Tonight's guest was 61 when he published his first novel, Black Fridays, in 2012. After 9 years as a professional actor and an undergraduate degree from the University of Maryland, he received an MBA from Columbia University. He spent over 20 years on Wall Street, rising to become the managing director in the bond trading and underwriting divisions of Paine Webber and later Jeffries & Co., before heeding his father's advice, which was, when it stops being fun, get out. He did so in 2005 and returned to what had always given him the greatest joy, writing, studying at NYU and the New School. He's here tonight to discuss his book Moral Bonds, which is the second novel in his series featuring Jason Stafford, a former Wall Street trader who, in the wake of serving a prison sentence for fraud, is forced to earn his keep investigating wrongdoings in the financial world he knows so intimately. Please join me in welcoming to Darien Library, Mr. Michael Sears.
Thank you. I don't know at what age it suddenly becomes uncomfortable to be announced in the first line, but I've definitely crossed it. But it is amazing at this point in my life to have this going on, and I recommend it to anyone. Take the leap when you can. It's great. And for those of you who have come to see Michael Sears, who's half of the writing team of Michael Stanley, I'm very sorry to disappoint you. It's happened to me before. Michael Stanley write a mystery series that takes place in Africa. Mine take place in a completely different jungle. Talk a little bit about how I got here, and then about process and how I work, and then we'll, I guess, open it up at that point for questions. The end of 2005, I was pretty fried, and I went to my boss at the time, and the two of us had worked parallel positions, or I had me for him or whatnot, but over the years, and I'd known him probably 15 years. And I said, Jim, I just really don't care anymore about making a lot of money. And he said, well, that definitely puts you in the minority here. And I left and gave myself the gift of, at this point, you've earned it. We're comfortable enough that go try and see where this writing leads. You've tried it many times before. You've written short stories. You've written stories for the kids, and travel logs from every vacation you've taken. Go see where this goes. And each step along the way, I found that there were these little successes, and some of them not so little. And I found that people did respond to what I was writing. I went from the NYU to the New School. The idea of maybe I will turn this into an MFA. And while I was there, I was invited to join a private workshop run by a woman named Jennifer Bell. And I thought, well, that was really great. She had been my teacher in one of the classes. I thought this was terrific. I went in, and first time I realized I'm the only non-published person in the room, which was a little intimidating, more than a little. But in time I got over it, and it was a really good workshop. Every week we'd bring in 7 pages. Jenny would critique first, but everyone would critique, and sometimes it was encouraged to disagree, and I quickly learned that not all of the feedback was really important. Some of it was good, some of it wasn't, and I was able to pick and choose from all of it. At any rate, I finished a book which will become part of my children's legacy. It's still sitting off somewhere, and started on this book that became Black Fridays. And a year and a half later, I had the meat of the book done, and I started sending it out to agents, and got my rejection file started growing and growing. And it was okay, because at this point I'm still having fun with all of this. This is not yet my job. This is just, I'm just seeing where this is going. I don't know. So a rejection from a top literary agent, it didn't hurt that much. It was okay. And then I started running into some of the real quacks and crazies in the business as well, like the woman who insisted she really, really wanted to read this book. But she wanted an exclusive. I had to give her an exclusive on it while she read it. Well, I had had rejections from people who had read it over the weekend. So I thought, she really wants it? Fine, an exclusive. 8 months later, I finally said, okay, that's that. I'm going to start sending it out to other people. And in this process, I called up a friend and said, here's this agent. Do you know him? And she said, oh, yeah. I should have mentioned that, so, years ago, that you probably would hit it off with him. And I sent him an email, a little letter, and the first 50 pages. And the next morning, there was in my inbox, send me the rest. And that agent is Nat Sobel, and he's got, you can look him up. He's got quite a list of people that he covers. And he and his wife are now my agents. They said, we'd really like to talk to you about the book. We have some ideas. Maybe you could change a couple of things. So, okay. And they said, come on and we'll go to lunch. And I said, okay, great. Where are we going? Just someplace in the neighborhood. And they're on East 19th Street. So I went by their office, which is also their house, and then we start walking, and I figure we're going to, I don't know, Pete's Tavern for a beer and a burger. And they take me across Union Square and start heading across on the other side of Union Square, and I realize, we're going to the Union Square Cafe for lunch. I'm being wooed. And at that point, my knees started getting real shaky. And that's what it was. Lunch was all about convincing me that I really should sign with them, which was fine by me. While I was working on Black Fridays, back to mix in a little bit of process here, I kept bringing in a prologue to the book, to the workshop. And every time I brought it in, I'd get creamed. We hate it. No. It's in the wrong voice. It's not only the voice is wrong, but the perspective is wrong. What has this got to do with anything? Get rid of it. But in the process, I had written 5 different prologues. And every time I brought one in, they'd say, that's exactly the way it was last time. And I'd say, no. I can show you it's really different. Didn't matter. And over lunch, Nat says, there's only one thing. You know what the book needs? It needs just a short prologue, something that really grabs us. Maybe if you did it instead of in the first person like the rest of the book, you did something like third person. I think I can come up with something. And I will read you just the first page of Black Fridays. The woman screamed for the first 3 seconds. 3 seconds took her down, only 14 stories. She still had 24 to go. She fainted. Her arms and legs stopped flailing. Her body went limp. The few pedestrians on Maiden Lane, forced by circumstance to brave the baking mid-afternoon sidewalk on the hottest first day of summer in New York City history, all froze at the sound, like grown-up children playing a game of statues. The bicycle messenger, a recent veteran of 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, was busy chaining his vehicle to the no parking sign. When he heard the scream, he dove clear across the sidewalk, landing behind a large concrete planter. Wind resistance on the woman's skirt, combined with the relative effects of gravity upon the denser mass of her head, spun her so that when she struck the roof of the idling town car at more than 100 miles per hour, she hit head first, like a bullet. Her heart, unaware that the woman was now legally dead, continued to pump for another few seconds, spewing streams and geysers of blood out of various wounds and orifices. Despite some doubts, the investigating team from NYPD found no reason not to treat the situation as a straightforward, successful suicide, thereby both clearing a case and, with the same stroke of the pen, keeping the murder rate down below the previous years, a measure of great importance to the Mayor's Office of Tourism. No one paid much attention to the shaky veteran who told anyone who would listen, "When you want to die, you don't scream like that." Black Fridays is the story of Jason Stafford's redemption. He committed an egregious fraud, went to prison for 2 years, and comes out and has to pick up the pieces of his life. One of those pieces is that he very quickly becomes the single parent to his 5-year-old autistic son. And choosing this particular disability, this challenge for him, was difficult in a lot of ways. I didn't know a whole lot about the subject, so I researched it a lot. I do have a couple of cousins who are at various ends of the spectrum, but not intimately familiar. But the more I read up on the subject, the really more fascinated I became about it, and I continue to read often. I follow a couple of blogs on it, and it's a fascinating subject, and it does challenge your patience. It challenges everything about your humanity, and if you can't rise to it, the process will kill you. And so I'm having a very good time, actually, writing about Jason and his son, and I have to keep reminding myself this is also a thriller. There's other parts of this book. But that's because writing about the two of them is the most fun part of the book for me. The first book came out last year, Black Fridays, last September. It was nominated for 5 of the Mystery Awards, including the Edgar. I did not win the Edgar. I was definitely disappointed. I did win the Seamus Award. Totally blown away by it, and totally blown away also by who I realized was in the room and who had voted on this, and realizing that I was suddenly part of this tradition that everyone in the room goes back to Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, and I got so choked up and amazed at winning that night that every prepared word that was in my head just flew out, and I was just standing there holding the book and the award, saying, "This is so cool." And another author, Reed Coleman, told me afterwards, "It's okay, you were really genuine." I'm not sure what rating of idiot that is, but. Mortal Bonds. Mortal Bonds is the second book, just came out in October, and it's been described as having to do with a Madoff-like Ponzi scheme. It's actually the fallout from it. I figure other people have written about Madoff and all of the other Ponzi schemes. I wanted to write about who got hurt, and not just, the Kira Sedgwick, and I wanted real people. I wanted professionals who had been sucked in by him, people who, how could you not know? And yet, the fact that they didn't know just absolutely fascinated me. They weren't blind, they were intelligent. People who were gutted by his generosity, and the charitable institutions who were hurt a whole lot by Madoff's work. Those were the issues that I wanted to play with and look at, and that's really what Mortal Bonds is about. It's the fallout. It's where all of the tentacles go. Where we all see the monster, but the person 3 events down the road who is also really destroyed by this. And I am right now finishing up the last commas and missing commas and who to whoms and whatnot on book number 3, and I'm ready to start on book number 4. This is now what I do, and it's really a terrific process. I've met extraordinary people, and the community of mystery and thriller writers is very warm and open and welcoming and supportive. Dennis Lehane, who did win an Edgar this year, said we all have to keep sending the elevator back down, and I've found that incredibly so, and it's already, I'm feeling it from the other side of people writing to me and asking me, with 2 books out, would I blurb their books for them? What can I do to help them along the way? And that's a very nice community to be part of, especially after 22 years on Wall Street. We're not really like that. So, let me see. One more quick story about Black Fridays and the story of Black Fridays, because it ties together my careers in many ways. My very first job on Wall Street, fresh out of business school, was working for a firm that brokered foreign exchange for large money center banks, and we were the intermediary. And I was there for about a year, only about 3 months doing foreign exchange, and then I moved over into another area and went on, and then a couple of years later, I was doing bonds, and I had nothing to do with foreign exchange again, and forgot all about these people until 20 years later, I picked up the Journal, and there on the front page, 50 people had been arrested the night before in an FBI sweep, an operation called Wooden Nickel, and the FBI said that this scam that they had been running had been going on for decades. And running my eye down the list of names, I realized, oh my goodness, I know some of these people, or knew them back then. And they were probably running this thing while me, fresh out of B school and not knowing anything. And it was a pretty wild place in many ways. We were across the street in an ancient building from the Federal Reserve. And the day before 4th of July, they opened the windows and they were firing bottle rockets across the street at the Fed. That was the kind of place it was. It was entertaining. And there were many different aspects of this scam that they were running. Some were just out and out fraud against retail investors. Others were a little bit more sophisticated, but the fact that there were so many people involved that had been going on forever. The FBI finally admitted later on that that when they first heard about this, they said, no, it's impossible. Somebody would have talked. Somebody would have given up something. We would have heard about this a long time before. But no, in fact, it was finally a con man, fake count, who was an FBI snitch on something completely unrelated, who said, let me tell you this story. At any rate, I saw this story in the journal. I thought, someday I'm gonna write this, and it was another 3 years before I took a writing class, and I quickly realized I'm not a nonfiction writer. But that is the basic MacGuffin of Black Fridays is that story. All the names have been changed to protect the innocent, et cetera, et cetera. But it was fun. And the last time I did a reading, someone with tongue firmly in cheek said, well, how are you going to keep getting ideas? Someone else answered him, read the newspaper. So, at any rate, it's fun to be here doing this, and I think right now I'll open it up for any questions about either my writing process or about the books in particular, or anything else you want to talk about here. Yes?
I have two. What happened to the woman who wanted exclusive rights? And the second one, do you have to read your novels in sequence?
What happened to the woman who...
You said originally one woman took the book and she wanted exclusive rights.
Oh, I had no idea.
No, I mean, she let you go. She never followed through.
No. Nope. I went to someone else. Nothing bad ever happened to me. She's never come back. I have no idea if she ever read it or not. But when I run into other new authors, budding authors, I tell that story every time because there's whack jobs in this business too. So, yeah, I'm sorry, the second part?
So, do you have to read your books in sequence?
Oh, no, you don't. This is something that was beaten into me by both agents and my editor, Neil Nyron at Putnam, and all the way through the process, including after Mortal Bonds was all done, the copy editors were done with it. It was to go off to be bound in advanced readers' copies. And at that point, Putnam's fact checker and another copy editor got together and said, wait, we just want to run through this one more time. The two of them read the book out loud to each other, comparing, taking notes, spent a whole week doing this, and gave me 8 pages of notes of things that you have to explain this, because the only time you explain it is in the first book. Or this doesn't match with the continuity in the first book. It was an extraordinary feat that I am humbled by, and I owe them so much. But no, I think both books stand on their own, and as I learn this process, I think book 3 will stand on its own as well. Yes.
I'm just curious about what is the writing process, because the books are, I mean, they're real page turners and they're very fluid. Is that the result of endless rewrites, or do you just sit down for a certain number of hours every day?
Oh yeah, it just flows right out.
I'm curious.
It's what I learned through the workshop is that outlining and the plot line and whatnot, those will come. The hard part is getting the reality, is getting the real grounding in believable characters and the way they sound and the way they interact with each other. This will really make people turn pages in the long run, much more so than just a really crazy plot. What I typically do is I will write for 4 to 6 months, and knowing kind of what the crime is, but not really knowing who all the bad guys are yet. I've probably got a couple in mind, but and write scenes. And eventually those scenes start to string together, and I see, oh, there's themes that I've got running here. This is an important theme. I need to bring this out more in other scenes. And then at some point it's like, okay, I've got a file of 150 pages, or I've got a stack of yellow pads like this, and I've got to do something with this. And at that point, I do a survey of everything I've got. Fairly detailed of this is what happens in this scene, this is what happens in this scene, what possible plot points are there, what clues might there be in there. And then I start fitting that together and creating a plot out of it. Issues of pacing and whatnot, those actually come later on, and if I've got the grounding done well, I find that the pacing, when I get to that point in the process, it's going by itself. And if I like to have shorter paragraphs toward the end of the book, but if I need shorter chapters rather toward the end of the book. But if I find, nope, I need 12 pages to cover this issue. If I've got the grounding, if I've got the reality of it, I know my reader will follow me through those. So.
Were you strong in writing growing up? I mean, what got you going into the financial direction besides
Desperation. I always enjoyed writing, and yes, I always had a knack for it. I'm absolutely convinced it was my essays that got me into Columbia Business School, because it certainly wasn't my undergraduate grades. But I never had the guts to say, I'm just going to leap off and try this. But I had written many things over the years, and like I say, this was just a gift to myself. Here, go try this and see where it leads. And the feedback I kept getting was, yeah, this is the right path to continue on.
What made you go into finance versus doing something more liberal arts?
A number of things. I met a Wall Street trader and realized I could do this. I'm as smart. I'm decent at math as well. I could do this. The books of Paul Erdman, who wrote financial thrillers 30 years ago, also had something to do with it, of reading them and realized, I understand this. And it's fascinating, and I'd love to try my hand at it. And that also worked out, and for a long time I was very happy doing it. And then when I wasn't, it was time to do something else. So.
Could I ask about the discipline? What does it take? Produced a couple of books in a couple of years. How much time do you put into it? I do regularly. I work at it regularly. I work at it pretty much every day, and I think it's through that discipline that has been a part of me through 2 careers before this. I use the same approach to it. And having spent 3 years in Catholic high school, the idea of a deadline being a hard and fast thing, and you better be there for it, is very important to me.
I know not all authors can work this way, and I am just amazed at those who can do it so much more efficiently than I can. The same author, Reed Coldman, I was complaining to him about the deadline coming up at the end of September and in a panic about getting it all done. And he said, just to make me feel better, he had written a 90,000-page book in 4.5 months and handed it in. I know there are people who can do that. I'm not one. But with drive and just stick-to-itiveness, I can make it happen in a year now. This I know. So.
Do you separate yourself from your family when you're doing this?
My wife's here. I think she wishes I would separate myself more. Actually, taking a month and just going off by myself and immersing myself in it for a while really helps a lot. That gets a lot of meat on the bone very quickly, and then I can afford to come back and have a more normal life where I simply go to work each day. So.
Are you sharing the characters with her and seeing if they're real, or do you just write it all on your own and to the editor?
Barb's shaking her head. No, I don't let her read it. Actually, I do, but not as much as she would like. Through the beginning of this process, I was very unsure of myself, and now I'm much more willing to share. But in terms of wanting feedback on it and whatnot, I used the workshop that way for years, and I've been on a sabbatical from the workshop for the last 6 months, but I'll probably go back again sometime in the future. It's an odd way to work. Publishers, editors don't like it at all.
What, the workshops?
They don't like workshop. I don't know. I've been told, oh, you don't want all those voices in your book. I don't know. It helped me. So.
I'm just wondering, Paul, you said you always were a decent writer. What about reader? You mentioned one author that you read that, but is there something? Do you have broad range of interest in your reading that helps you bring things in?
My favorite author is Patrick O'Brien, the Aubrey Maturin series. I've gone back and started at the beginning 3 different times, and I've got it on my iPad. I listen to it every once in a while in the car, which is a fair ways away from this. But I also love thrillers and more mysteries than thrillers. I read a lot of current authors now that I'm meeting them all. I think it's nice that I should have some understanding of what they do. I mean, Robert Parker I thought was amazing when he was on, and he was pretty good when he wasn't on. In terms of a single author, I would pick John MacDonald and his Travis McGee novels. And like my character, Travis McGee, was a finder, a fixer. And if anybody ever compared the two characters in a review or an essay, it would make my day, absolutely. So. Yes?
I believe you said that you realized you didn't like nonfiction. It wasn't for you. It wasn't your forte. I'm just wondering, would historical fiction fall into that because it's got to be based on some facts? And I'm just wondering why, what it was that you discovered that it wasn't for you.
As soon as I started working on this story of Wood and Nickel, I realized, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to really delve into each one of these real people and figure out what their drives were and what in order to make it really captivating and interesting. That sounds like a lot of work. Whereas I could come up with just as interesting characters on my own, and it's just a different mindset. And as for historical fiction, I like Patrick O'Brien. I read David Liss, Susan McNeill, who was also one of the nominees for the Edgar this year, and has become a friend, who writes a series about women working in the war room for Churchill during the Second World War. And I read those, and the amount of detail there, and I realized the amount of research that went into this is really daunting for me. Whereas when I'm researching about a financial issue, or I'm researching about the quirks of autism, which are all about character and psychology and seeing the world from different points of view, which just excites me more, rather than the detail of historical. I don't think I could do it. Yes?
I have two questions. I'll just start with one and then we can come back to the second one. The first one is, how many words are in this book, and how important is word count to you, or to your editors or publishers or whatever? And do you write to word count?
Oh, man. Black Fridays started out 120,000 words, and everyone told me, you can't send it out like that. No one will read it. As soon as they see it's over 100,000 words, you've got to cut it back. And I really hated doing that, and they were right. And it actually made the book a lot better. I had overwritten the book incredibly, and it didn't need it. What I took out was fluff and fat, and that was okay. The third book that I just finished, I was really concerned. I'm finishing this book up, and it's under 80,000 words. That sounds really light. That sounds slim to me. Is my editor going to be upset with this and whatnot? And by the time I went back and finished my revisions and said, oh, this needs to be explained, and 94,000 words. So
Is there
I think-
really a number that they won't touch?
I think for a first-time author to bring in a manuscript of over 100,000 words, the number of people who will possibly read this drops extraordinarily. As for what's really too light, I don't know. But I felt like once I'd done 2 books in this range, to hand in a third one that was 20% less, I thought needed some beefing up. But I don't think it did. I think it just needed more fixing. And it ended up where it was by accident more than anything. Did we get your second question?
No, the second question was, is there more passion in the first book than in the second book?
No. The first book is
Passion for you and you know what I'm asking about that.
Yeah.
Not the result, but the process of doing it and all the rest for you.
This was a delight, and it was an experiment. I didn't know if I could write a thriller. I had no idea. I didn't know why I thought I could write about autism intelligently either. But the story of it, the MacGuffin, was something I was interested in, and thought that I knew enough about this and about these people and what they'd done that I could write about this intelligently. Mortal Bonds was another thing entirely, and this the passion there came from a friend who was caught up in this in the Madoff scheme. He and I had parallel careers. His always more successful than mine. We'd worked at different shops. We'd worked at the same shop, and he was living in London and working for a hedge fund, and got kind of pulled in sideways at the end of Madoff's run, and ended up bankrupt and seeing a therapist, and missed criminal charges by a hair, and knowing with just a slightly different step in my career at some point, I could have been that guy. And he, at various times in his life, we all ran up against regulators at various times, and to see these hard guys asking hard questions, and you really expected that these people, are out there defending the whole system, and then to find out that Madoff had been investigated and they missed it every time. They paid no attention to the whistleblowers who said, well, look at this, and let it all go on. Was something that he was blown away by it. Anyway, I realized that was the passion for me. It was I can write this story, and I should. People should hear this. So.
After you finished your first book, how many agents did you send it to? And during that time that you were waiting to hear back, what did you do with your time? Did you work on the story more? Or?
I started on a completely different book, something that I there wasn't a thriller. It was light. It was funny. Maybe someday I'll go back and play with it again because it was a lot of fun. But it kept my head out of thinking, oh, who's reading my book today, and why haven't they gotten back to me, and kind of kept the lid on that pressure cooker part of it. I've probably got 24 rejection letters, and not all of them from top people, and many of them were recommended people, and I had people from the workshop who would say, oh, here, write to this person, and I'd write, so-and-so thinks my book is great, and they're your friend, and you should read my book, and didn't work out until it worked out. And my editor likes to tease me about how I probably think that this path that I've been on is how it happens for everyone, and I realize no, I'm really, really blessed, and the numbers are just crazy against the possibility of actually getting a book published by any major publisher these days. But the personal rewards are so incredible. Go try it. Go do it. Just keep pushing. There's always going to be the opportunity to self-publish or find another road to it when you get there. In the meantime, every one of those rejections makes you learn something, even if all you learn is that there's some real whack jobs in this business too. So.
What's the most favorite part of the whole process? The thinking of the idea and thinking of how you can put it together, or the actual daily writing of it, or actually when you're finished the whole project and the satisfaction of seeing a creation that you've done and it's now out there?
Oh, each one has its rewards, but I enjoy the research part of it. The past 2 days I read 2 books on autism that gave me ideas and insights that I hadn't had before. On the other hand, really just crafting a real good chapter or scene with a good kicker at the end, or a twist to it or something. My wife will tell you she hears me chuckling in my room, or at times I'm so in love with what I've just done. And those are the daily rewards. They're also the days when I just get up at the end of the day and haven't done anything, and this was aggravated forever that way. But
You say you have a background in finance, you worked in finance. What's your impression of the financials of book publishing? There's less and less publishers, it's harder, there's the internet disruptors, you need a certain number of, obviously you get paid by somehow or other, and then you have to sell a certain number of books, or what's the continued drive, I guess, for the economics of books, for authors and book publishing these days?
I wouldn't bet on this industry. I'm having a ball, but so many things I just don't understand, and I think a lot of people don't. And the consolidation still goes on. I mean, Putnam is part of Penguin, which is now going to be aligned with Random House, and there's all kinds of silly jokes of random penguins and things like that people are coming up with about it. But what it means is if there's one less place to go to, there's one thing that they drill into you early, your agents drill into you early, is that you only get one shot at each house. Putnam is one of the imprints at Penguin. And I'm going to go blank now if I try and remember the others, but if you send it to Neil Nyren at Penguin, you cannot send it to so-and-so at Riverhead. You can't do that. It's not allowed. Well, we just had two of the majors merged together this way. All of those imprints still exist, but they're all under one roof now. That's a one less place you can go to now try and sell your book. Means the competition for what they're willing to pay for manuscripts is they're trying to regain the power in the situation, and you've got a company out there that is now producing books and selling books and doing them in all formats and losing money on the whole thing, and has been for years, and is controlling the whole pricing of the situation. I'm talking Amazon, and I buy books on Amazon. I'm not innocent in this process either, but I don't see really how this works out at this point. I'm happy to be part of it. It's interesting, it's exciting, but I don't think it's going to be easy for any of the players in it.
So back to the books. In Black Fridays, I can't remember the name of it, but there is a bar that your character frequents, and I'm wondering if it is based off an actual bar.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us which bar?
B&G. That's the name of the book, and that it was the name of the bar.
Oh, really?
And it is gone.
Oh.
Yeah. It closed up. I was just about done with the book when it closed, and it actually moved uptown to another location, and it didn't work. It lost all of its cachet, and we're moving into a nice space. But it had been there, I think, 64 years, and a bank was supposed to go in, and then the market fell apart, and the economy tanked, and so the bank didn't go in, and the last thing I saw in there was a pizza place. you know, sad. But that's part of the fun part of the geography of my books is that the city is always changing, always I kept getting notes from my editor as I'm going along saying, sorry, just went out of business. I thought, my God, I'm killing restaurants on the West Side. This is like some Stephen King novel.
Your books are very visual, and listening to you talk about the process where you write scenes is very cinematic. That's part of how screenplays are done with scenes. So I'm wondering if there's been any interest from anybody to make the first book or this book into any sort of a film or television movie?
Nothing that's ever gotten any legs to it at all. I've gotten emails from private equity firms that want to buy the options on my books. I just pass this on to my agent and say, I don't know, you talk to them. And the same way I've been approached by a couple of Hollywood production companies, and my favorite, it didn't go anywhere at all, but was a email from a woman at a production company, and she listed their credits. I said, this is the exact kind of company that I would want to do this book. They do serious stuff. This is for real. She wrote, I recently read a review of your book. I was like, this is so Hollywood, I can't stand it. She read it 2 paragraphs. She probably read the first 2 sentences of the first paragraph. And out of that is going to talk to me about committing dollars to it. So, but all this just gets passed on to my agents, and I really don't think about it. Years ago, I saw Nelson DeMille give a book reading like this, and people asked him, why not, your books are so perfect to make into movies. Why have so few? And he said, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to think about it. Every time somebody approaches me on this, they make me crazy. I just take their checks and cash them. I hope they sometime get to that point, that's all.
We have time for one more question.
So could you, I'll let you answer this any way you please, your relationship and feeling about working with your editor and the changes and the dealing with that, and when you get to loggerheads, any way you want to approach that.
After I did the changes that my agents had requested, they said, okay, we're going to now send this out, and we're going to try and get a 2-book deal because you are of an age where people are concerned that you may only have 1 book in you, so and no one's going to commit anything to a 1-book author. So write a little synopsis and we'll send this out, which that in itself made me crazy. But eventually I did get them something. We sent it out, and they called me a week or so later and said, an editor wants to talk to you. He wants to know if you're willing to make changes. He's would like to bid on the book, but he wants to know that he can talk to you. And I said, okay, sure, who's this? And I said, okay, it's Neil Nyren at Putnam. And I immediately Googled Neil Nyren at Putnam and said, oh my God, this is real serious stuff. And I said, okay, yeah, I'd certainly talk to him about changes. And when I did, they were so light. He liked the book. He liked what was there. It wasn't heavy-handed at all. And I'm like I say, I'm blessed with a great agent and a great editor. The only time we've really come to loggerheads is on names. This was Blue Mondays, because for a lot of reasons, but the kid wears blue on Mondays, and about 6 months after everything was flowing along in the right direction, the calendar or the catalog for the whole next year for all of Penguin came out, and there was a Blue Monday singular by an author way ahead of me on the list. And they said, you're out, that's it. We can't have a Blue Monday and a Blue Mondays in the same year. It's the same sales force. They're not going to sell your book. So this led to 3 months of the worst ideas I have ever heard in my life. And trying to be polite about them and then realizing that the ideas I'm coming up with are really terrible too. Black Fridays was like number 3, 4, or 5 on the list all the time, and we keep knocking off the first couple, and finally, my agent and the editor and I all kind of got together and said, why don't we just go with Black Fridays? And immediately it was this huge relief, and I was like, that's the right title for that book. That really works. There's all kinds of ways. I went back and I made a few little subtle twists and turns here, and it was absolutely perfect. So, but we've now had the similar things with Mortal Bonds, and we've already started on the title arguments for the 3rd book. So, goes on.